last one, and it is, I am the true grapevine, John 15. So he says this, I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit, so they will produce even more. You have already been pruned and purified by the message I have given you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me, and I in them, will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father. I have loved you even as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with joy, my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends since I have told you everything the Father told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other. All right. Bless you, kids and young people, as you head out with Mandy and Anna. And is there anyone else going out this morning? Andrew Leask, I think, or Dale, or both, and Liv. Liv, thank you, Liv, for coming and joining us. Oh, and Russell. And Tash. Is anyone staying to hear the sermon this morning? Chris, thank you. All right. Wonderful. Bless you guys. Have a good time this morning. Okay. Does anyone know why there's a set of matches up here? It's very confusing to me, but I keep picking them up and playing with them. Okay. So in our Bible reading this morning, as I've already mentioned, John 15 is about Jesus drawing on this image of the grapevine in the final one of these I am statements. So he's trying to fill out the image we have of who God is and who he is. Grapevines, a little bit like sheep and shepherding, as we've already heard about, were a well-known part of life for the people that Jesus was speaking about. Grapevines, olives, another thing that is just prolific in the Near East, in and around, where they were living, around Jerusalem and Judea and Galilee, those areas. So immediately, as Jesus starts talking about the vine and the branches and pruning and things, most of the people would have been reasonably familiar with the imagery and how they grew grapes. They knew the basic practices of first century viticulture. One of the key practices was that until a branch was fully mature and thick and strong enough to carry the weight of big bunches of grapes without actually it damaging the branch itself, they would not let it grow fruit. So they would actually prune fruit buds off for a couple of seasons until a new branch had really gotten thick enough and strong enough so that the grapes weren't actually sucking out the nutrients and the life and stopping the branch from developing to what it needed to be. And so that's a practice that was well known. People would have understood that as Jesus is talking about, pruning the branches that bear fruit so that they can go on and bear more fruit. They had the long game in mind as they did this. And so from this passage, there are lessons to be learned about God's desire for us. He wants us to grow and mature. He cares about our strength. He cares about our health. He cares about our well-being. He isn't a God who wants us to just try and work really hard. There's a language in there a bit later on that he doesn't see us as his slaves. He sees us as his friends. So he doesn't want us to be burned out. He really wants us to be nourished and grow stronger. And in the long run, we will then bear more fruit as we grow in health and in knowledge of his love. In the Building a Discipling Culture training, we talk about rhythms of life from this passage in John 15. We talk about the fact that we can't just focus on bearing fruit as Christians. There sometimes is a little bit of a trait in evangelicalism that, we have to work really hard and do our bit, and it's actually, that's true to a certain extent. But we have to be careful we balance that and actually don't forget that Jesus is the one who comes and says, any of you who are weary or burdened, any of you who are burned out on religion, come to me and I will give you rest. Work with me, and it is a working metaphor that he gives in Matthew 11. Work with me and I will teach you how to live, how to rest. Jesus tells us that we need to focus on abiding in John 15. So like in the story of the Good Shepherd, we need to come in and go out. There is rhythm. We aren't just to be always working. We need to come in and find rest. And in this image, perhaps we need to be pruned of some things that are sucking the life out of us, sucking the nutrients out of us. There will be times where Jesus actually says, hey, you're doing too much. You need to back off. I need to take this away from you. I need to simplify your life. And we actually need to be receptive to that. He isn't always asking us just to keep adding in and doing more. So, all of that coming out of first century viticulture practices, these are important things to pick up and learn. And that's normally what I focus on and preach on when I pick up John 15. But grapevines weren't just familiar to Jesus' audience because of the immediate history or the immediate time and place they lived in. The image of the grapevine is actually one that comes up in the Old Testament scriptures. It's a significant image for them in the Old Testament of Israel and Judah being a grapevine that God has planted. He planted it, he cares for it, he prunes it. It's his precious possession. In particular, the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah both speak of Israel and Judah as God's vineyard, and they use this imagery in their prophetic warning, saying that God is going to bring down the walls around his vineyard. He's going to remove the hedge of protection and allow his vineyard to be trampled and plundered. And so this image that Jesus is using is familiar both in the present tense. Grapevines produced fruit that they loved, wine that they loved. It was a rich kind of metaphor in that sense. But it was also bittersweet in that it harkened back to the prophetic images that were a painful part of their history. They knew this imagery. They knew the story, their story of how they had once been God's beautiful vineyard, but then fallen into captivity and exile, and they had never been fully restored to the same glory that they knew was part of their history under David and Solomon. So this morning, I want us to take a moment to just engage with some of that backstory a little bit and try and step into that and experience what may have been going on for some of Jesus' listeners. And we're going to do that by reading Psalm 80. So if you have Psalm 80, or you have your Bibles, open up to Psalm 80. I'm going to read this out, and I want you to notice what's going on in this psalm. Notice the emotions. Notice the story that's behind it. And just imagine, carrying this as part of your identity and part of your history as Jesus comes and talks about him being the true vine. Please listen, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph's descendants like a flock. O God enthroned above the cherubim, display your radiant glory to Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. Show us your mighty power. Come to rescue us. Turn us again to yourself, O God. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. O Lord of heaven's armies, how long will you be angry with our prayers? You have fed us sorrow and made us drink tears by the bucketful. You have made us the scorn of neighboring nations. Our enemies treat us as a joke. Turn us again to yourself, O God of heaven's armies. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. You brought us from Egypt like a grapevine. You drove away the pagan nations and transplanted us into your land. You cleared the ground for us, and we took root and filled the land. Our shade covered the mountains, our branches covered the mighty cedars. We spread our branches west to the Mediterranean Sea. Our shoots spread east to the Euphrates River. But now, why have you broken down our walls so that all who pass by may steal our fruit? The wild boar from the forest devours it, and the wild animals feed on it. Come back, we beg you, O God of heaven's armies. Look down from heaven and see our plight. Take care of this grapevine that you yourself have planted, this son you have raised for yourself. For we are chopped up and burned by our enemies. May they perish at the sight of your frown. Strengthen the man you love, the son of your choice. Then we will never abandon you again. Revive us so we can call on your name once more. Turn us again to yourself, O Lord, God of heaven's armies. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. What stands out to you in that psalm? What do you notice?
Grapevine.
It's a grapevine in it, yeah. Absolutely.
Wait for God to act.
Yeah, they're waiting for God to act.
Application, trusting in the Lord.
Yep. Trust in the Lord. What else? Yeah. There's an acknowledgement in there. So they're asking the question, why, God, have you abandon us in a sense. It's not what the words they use. But then there is the acknowledgement as the psalm progresses. We will never abandon you again. If you revive us, extend your mercy to us, then we will never abandon you again. There's actually an acknowledgement here. There is repentance in this psalm. They had turned away from God. They had stopped worshipping him faithfully as a nation. They understand the exile. They understand what's going on at some level. They knew that they had to be disciplined. And here they are realizing what they have lost. Realizing that they can't just stand on their own. They can't just go their own way, live their own life, do whatever they please, and that everything will continue on with the blessing that they had once known. So this psalm is full of grief. It's full of loss. And yet, full of hope. They believe that God will hear their prayers. They believe that God will have mercy. It's a complex psalm, full of tension. Can you see the connection to John 15? Can you see the link? When Jesus is using language of branches being burned, this is language that is already in their prayers, in their psalms that they would sing and recite. He's actually using their history as, I guess, a warning and a cry for what the future might look like. So there are a number of layers going on here, and perhaps the most emotional for many hearing Jesus use this language are those branches being chopped off and burned. I think when we come to John 15 without any context, without thinking about the backstory, it's easy for people to read this and go, this is a really judgmental and harsh God. The moment we slip up, he's going to tear us away, burn us up. He's going to get in a huff and dismiss us. But it's not like that at all. This points back to a history of generation upon generation of corruption growing and growing in God's people, to the point where those who went to the courts to seek justice were trodden on and abused by those in power. It was an awful time. And it reached the point where God absolutely had to say, I can't be part of this anymore. I have to withdraw my hand of blessing from you, and you will become like all other nations in this world. You will be conquered. You will rise, you will fall. No longer will you be protected in the way that you have been. And Jesus is really, pointing here that this idea of judgment is actually the consequences of what they have chosen, and the same for us today, the consequences of what we might choose. Who do we choose to worship? Now, not just what we tick on the census form, but how do we live each day? What are our true values? What are we pursuing? What matters most? This is what Jesus is talking about. Seek first the kingdom. Seek first me. I am where your life comes from. And when you're in that place, you will bear good fruit and you will remain in my love. But when you walk away from that, when you seek your own agendas, your own will, your own life, and go your own way, remember where that will lead you. Remember that you will wither. Remember that you will dry up. Remember that life will depart from you. people who heard John 15, they knew the story. They knew that this was about their history as much as being about their future. They knew Psalm 80 and they knew these prayers that recorded them asking God to revive in them a healthy spirit so that they would pursue him fully. This has been a challenging week a challenging message for me to prepare because as I mentioned earlier, the last few weeks of my life have been crazy. We have a bit of a problem in our backyard. Well, we have a number. One, we've got to put up a pool fence, and that's triggered some planning around how we're going to do that, what's that going to look like. And as part of the plan, we decided that we would also fix a drainage problem around our garage. In really heavy rains, our garage, leaks in from the back and floods in. And that's not something that we want to see continue, so we thought we'll fix that at the same time. And we came up with a plan that we would kind of slope the concrete down from the back of the garage and around the garage so that water would run off the surface and run away, and there was a drain sort of halfway down our garage. So we got a concreter in and asked him, would you be able to do this before we go away on holidays? We've got house sitters coming. We don't want to get the landscaper in and dig things up and then, leave a big mess. Because at our house it's a bit weird. There's no laundry inside the house. You have to go outside into the garage. That's where our laundry is. We didn't want to leave, a clay pit between the house and the garage. So we got this concreter in, and he looked at our plans and said, "Yep, that's fine. We'll be able to do that. I can keep some space and we'll be able to get that done in the time frame that you're talking about." So we're like, great. We booked the landscaper to come in with his excavator, and he dug up our backyard, removed some old concrete, a whole bunch of pavers, dug some footings and things around there for the new concrete and whatnot. And while he was there, he was at the end of that day that he was working, I had a second concreter come in just to give a second quote for what the concreting job might cost. And this concreter says, "Oh, we can't do this. This plan won't work because you can't slope the concrete up towards the back of the garage, because out the back of your garage you've got a sewer vent thing called an ORG, for those who know the language. That's there so if the main sewer in the street blocks up, it leaks outside your building, not inside. It has to be lower than the drain in the floor inside your laundry. You can't raise that up." And so our plan involved raising the level of the concrete up and raising that up, and that wasn't going to work. The first concreter didn't notice that. The second concreter did, thankfully. And so that changed the plans. Over the last few weeks, I've been digging in, I think it's about 50 metres of pipe underground. Because of the way we had to do things. We had to run back further all the way to our driveway and dig up our stormwater to get it lower in the ground so that it would all work. And that has just been hours and hours of work. It would have cost about $10,000 to pay someone to come in and do it. And I was like, I don't have that spare $10,000, so off we went. And I've had a lot of support and a lot of people helping me. It's actually, in a sense, been a really blessed experience in the end, but our life has been crazy. And then I sit down and I read this passage about, rhythms of life and abiding in Jesus, and go, yeek, what have my quiet times looked like over the last few weeks? It's been crazy. And so I've wrestled with this, but one of the beautiful things is in the process, I haven't at all felt God, looking down his nose at me and going, "Oh, you're not good enough," or how dare you miss your quiet times, or, God has seen my situation, seen the reality of it, and been very present with me in that. And we've seen some real little blessings along the way of things that have just gone right, and people who have turned up at the right time. We've found favour with contractors and all sorts of things. It's been wonderful. But I come to this now and go, that pattern can't continue. We've broken the back of it. I now need to take control of the rhythms of my life a little bit. It's tempting to go and, there's just this bit more I could tidy up or that I could fix. But now, no, actually the priority is regaining rhythms of life. And so this week I picked up a new devotion ebook out of my Logos library. Doesn't matter where it came from. But anyway, I picked this up and have started reading a simple devotion. I was looking for one that is fairly short and sweet that maybe we can read as a family while we're away on holiday. Anyway, the day that I sat down to prepare this message, September 13's date, this was the devotion. I want to share it with you because I think it's really on topic for what we're talking about. It's from A.W. Tozer, by the way. I think it's called Evenings with A.W. Tozer. The title is More Concerned Today for Fruit Than for the Root. And it's actually based on Proverbs 12 verse 3, which says, "The root of the righteous shall not be moved." Tozer writes this: "One marked difference between the faith of our fathers, as conceived by the fathers, and the same faith as understood and lived out by their children, is that the fathers were concerned with the root of the matter, while their present-day descendants seem concerned only with the fruit. Today, we write the biographies of the Augustines, the Luthers, and the Wesleys and celebrate their fruit. But the tendency is to ignore the root out of which the fruit sprang. The root of the righteous yielded fruit, said the wise man in Proverbs. Our fathers looked well to the root of the tree and were willing to wait with patience for the fruit to appear. We demand the fruit immediately, even though the root may be weak and knobby or missing altogether. How can we ignore the fact that the bough that breaks off from the tree in the storm may bloom briefly, giving the impression that it is a healthy and fruitful branch, but its tender blossoms will soon perish, and the bough itself will wither and die? There is no lasting life apart from the root. Much that passes for Christianity today is the brief, bright effort of the severed branch to bring forth its fruit in season. But the deep laws of life are against it. Preoccupation with appearances and a corresponding neglect of the out-of-sight root of the tree, the root of the true spiritual life, are prophetic signs which go unheeded. Now, I have to confess, I'm not 100% sure what Tozer is talking about, when he's criticizing the church in that. He's not from Australia, his context is different, but I'm sure we can imagine there are times that we, put lots of effort into the busyness of church ministries and programs and doing things and bustling about. But the sentiment is really what matters here. Are we investing deeply into the source of nourishment of our spiritual health? Because only out of that is where we will love with the same kind of generous love that Jesus loved us. And that's what the second half of John 15 is all about. He connects this bearing fruit to the love that he has for the Father, the love that he experiences in the Father, and the way that he has loved us and is inviting us into his love and inviting us to love others in the same way. This is my commandment, he says, that you will love one another. And he's teaching that we cannot try and love one another. That love comes from him. We have to know it. It will flow out of us as we do. So as I head off on holidays, have a renewed commitment to make spaces and time to walk with Jesus, to sit with him, to read perhaps some of Tozer or others in the scriptures and journal and pray, and it will be a blessed time. And as I head off, I want to encourage you all to make sure you are doing the same. Jesus is the source of your life. Time with him, knowing him, listening to him, matters above all else. Let me pray for you. Loving God, I want to thank you that you sent Jesus. I want to thank you that he came and did things like called Zacchaeus out of the tree and said, I want to come and eat at your house, Zacchaeus. I want to thank you that he stopped and paused and listened to and healed those who the religious leaders of his time just didn't have time for. I want to thank you for the picture of God that he has given us. The great I am that flung stars into space, that guided Israel out of Egypt with pillars of fire and smoke, parted the seas. That is the same God that invites us gently to eat with him, that he will knock on the door, and if we shall open it, he will come in and make his home with us. Jesus, thank you for revealing who you are. May we be hungry to eat with you. May we be hungry to listen to you. May you revive us so that we will never abandon you. Lead us into life and love, I pray. Amen.